Hi, I'm Gaviola. Welcome to the Peak on Global, where we break down what is trending in the business world and what you need to know to stay ahead of the curve. Joining me now is Chang from the Peak podcast. Welcome, Brett.
And great to be with you.
Let's get into the fact that this week, the American Central Bank announced it is holding interest rates steady. Now, this comes as the Bank of Canada fired up rate hikes once more. And even a temporary divergence in monetary policy does have an impact. Why should we care about what this Fed pause means? What actually does it mean for Canadians?
So a diversion in the policy between the Bank of Canada and the Federal Reserve likely will mean that the Canadian dollar will be stronger. And the reason for this is that if interest rates are higher in Canada, many investors will look at the Canadian dollar as a better, more yield returning place to put their money. And that will be helpful in a number of ways, especially when it comes to fighting inflation. It means that our dollar just goes farther in the U.S. And then personally, it means that we travel, buy things from the U.S. It will also go even further.
Yeah, so let's connect those dots. As you were saying, a strong Canadian dollar vis-a-vis the greenback means your money goes farther if you're cross-border shopping, so some good news there. Your U.S. vacation budget dollars go the extra mile. It also helps tame inflation because it makes it cheaper for us to import goods. Good news for our exporters as well. This is a pretty interesting spot that we find ourselves in, right, Brett?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it doesn't happen very often. I think the last time that the Canadian dollar was strong would have been about 10 years ago, and so it's an unusual place for us to be, but it is really, really good. I think it's helpful, like I said before, in helping and fight inflation. It means that we'll be able to import goods cheaper than we would otherwise, and then two, just for us personally, as we travel to the U.S. now, we can buy things at a discount that we would have gotten about a month or two ago.
Yeah, so this is the kind of thing that might make the Bank of Canada's lift in its fight to tackle inflation or bring it down to something closer to its 2% target just a little bit easier, which is always nice. Our next topic is related, but we'll get to that in a second. We have to talk about the incredible rise and fall of the Instant Pot. So this is a kitchen gadget. It was invented by an Ottawa couple. It was all the rage for many years, and by the time it filed for bankruptcy, it was controlled by I believe it's a U.S. private equity firm. It said it had too much debt to withstand rising interest rates and tighter credit conditions. And now, Instant Brands, worth noting, was also the maker of Pyrex kitchenware, so it wasn't necessarily a one-trick pony, right, Brett?
Yeah, it's a very interesting story what happened to the Instant Pot. The Instant Pot was very popular. My mom had one. She used it all the time. She would make incredible stews with it, and it was a really great device. And I think the real story here is the impact that private equity can have on, I think, very viable and good businesses. The way private equity works is that they'll take a good asset that's doing really well and is a sustainable business, and they'll leverage it up, take out tons of debt on it to an unsustainable level where if conditions change, whether that be, in this case, supply chain issues or an economic downturn, they can no longer service that debt. And a perfectly good company that employed many people now goes out of business. And I think it really calls into question what the role of private equity is in the broader economy and whether there should be some regulations around their activity to make sure that working people aren't the ones who are getting hurt in the end.
Yeah, that always, that frequently seems to be the case. And of course, not all private equity firms operate the same. It is interesting to note in the case of Instant Pot, I believe it was also a casualty of the air fryer craze, which took over from the slow cooking trend that a lot of households really embraced during the start of the pandemic. Though from the looks of it, a lot of people were using devices they had already purchased, so they already had them in their homes as opposed to ordering another one. The Instant Pot, worth noting, it hit the market back in 2010. It's been a while, and millions of these kitchen staples were sold, including one to your mom. But here's the problem, or one of the problems, I guess. They work really well. They don't require a ton of maintenance. It's kind of a one and done purchase. Is that the problem? Was it too good for its own good?
Yeah, that's true for many different products that we buy, and they run very consistent and stable businesses. And so I don't see that as being the particular issue here. I think obviously there are trends. So the air fryer got popular and people were buying those and using them, and that was good for them, and it was probably not good for the Instant Pot, but those trends swing. It's one of these staple products that many people have in their kitchens that they use, and maybe they move to a new home, or maybe the market expands where new people are getting homes and they need to buy their Instant Pots. Really, it's a sustainable business, just like many others that have kind of shorter duration buying periods. The big problem here was that they were acquired by a private equity firm that really didn't have the interests of the people that worked at that company and their customers at heart. And ultimately, what ended up happening was, and I think this is an important point, they took out $270 million of cash from the business that it could have used right now to be able to weather the debt storm that they're facing.
That's right. They had no cushion, and guess what? Now was the time that they absolutely needed it. So that speaks to the strategy and a lot of the timing too. I want to talk, just take a minute here to talk about what I like to call the air fryer cult. Brett, do you own an air fryer?
I do not. I just don't have enough space in my kitchen. You need a lot of space for all these different devices you're picking.
Yeah, have you noticed how fanatical, though, people are about them? It's never kind of this neutral thing. You're either, I mean, I find that most of the people who own air fryers really have seem to have a vested interest in me getting one as well. And they spend a lot of time and effort conveying their enthusiasm for this one device. I mean, it's not something that they're pretty neutral about. They love it.
It's the cult of the air fryer. You know, they go right up there with Volvo owners in terms of their fanaticism about a product. But look, I think I hear the chicken wings are great when you air fry them, and so maybe someday, and if I get a bigger kitchen, have a bit more space, maybe I'll dabble into the air fryer world.
I wish that for you, Brett. And I hear salmon is really good in the air fryer too. Look where this has spiraled. Thank you so much for your time and your insight.
Thanks, Anne. Appreciate it.
You can get all your daily business news with the Peak Daily Podcast. It is available for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you find your favorite podcasts.